I'm Michelle Prezan, and welcome back to Strength in Your Storm. How important is nutrition? Is there a link between nutrition and cancer? How about nutrition and other diseases? This was a question I had when I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and that's why I'm so excited about my guest today. I was fortunate enough to meet her last year. I was introduced by a friend. Her name is Jenny Hrbacek, and she is a breast cancer survivor. She's an author, she's a registered nurse, and she's an advocate. She wants to help people have more information on health and what they can do for themselves. She's the author of Cancer Free, Are You Sure? It's an amazing book. But not only this, she's also started an online resource called Cancer Free University for all of us to get more knowledge. So Jenny, thank you so much for being here today. I'm so excited to talk to you and be able to share your knowledge with everybody else.
Well, I love to do that. So hopefully I can answer all your questions.
Yes, I'd like to get right into it
because there definitely is a link. You're onto something here.
Oh, good. See, you're the perfect person to have this episode with. I'd love for you to just give us a little bit of background of yourself before we move into the nutrition.
Okay. I was just a standard American 47-year-old back in 2009, which I guess I just told how old I am. Sorry. Not supposed to do that. But I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I had my tumor markers were fine. I felt fine until they told me that I had cancer. Anyway, I got through that. That you have to read my book to find out about that. But what I did find out was when I went to fast forward a lot of tears and a lot of IVs and a lot of 6 surgeries, I ended up at a breast cancer support group. And I found out that half the women in the room had had a recurrence. And they had gone through the same diagnosis, the same therapies that I had. And I thought, wait a minute, if it's happening to them, it could happen to me, and I need to figure out what's going on here. So that's when I did the research and I wrote the book, Cancer Free, Are You Sure? Because I can tell you how to find cancer years before the lump or bump. And then I actually am now getting into all the integrative therapies, and I can refer people to great physicians. There's so many around the country, and help them to learn their options, because I didn't know the options. And I just went straight for what the first doctor I got to told me to do. And that was not really what I would do again if I had a do-over.
So you said something really powerful. You said you could find cancer before a lump or bump. Before. That's
yes.
So explain that. How can you find before?
Yes. Why we find diabetes, we find heart disease, we find osteoporosis. We're not looking. Actually, your standard of care is not to look. You cannot get an official diagnosis of cancer unless you have a positive biopsy or a positive PET scan. They want that biopsy. So what are they going to stick a needle in? And let me tell you, these tumors we know don't pop up overnight. They can take 7 to 10 years to get a lump big enough for it to present a symptom. Years. 7 to 10 years before people might even know they have a lump. But guess what? Those tumors are throwing off proteins. They actually shed cancer cells into the bloodstream. We now can do it with a blood test. It's called a liquid biopsy. There's a plethora of companies doing that.
So you don't have to do a biopsy where they go in and do any kind of needle. You can
cancer
do it by...
is not the tumor. And I'm waiting for the public to connect the dots on that, because these labs are taking blood out of your arm and they're giving you the genomic profile, or they're doing chemosensitivity testing by growing those living cancer cells for your tumor that's in your liver or in your spine or in your lung, and they've never touched that area, which is actually good, because we know that once we puncture in that actual tumor mass, the cells they send out signals. Hey, we're dying over here. Send some more growth hormone. And we know that it's not a good thing to stick a needle into a cancer, because you're stimulating growth and you're stimulating it to spread more throughout the body.
But most people think that's our only option. You think we have to do a biopsy
and that's what the doctors, traditional medicine will tell you that. And a lot of integrative doctors will want the biopsy, but the point is, I want to change the paradigm. I don't want people to ever get the lump or bump. If we started doing the test in my book every 5 years on people, we would take the fear out of cancer. Because right now when you get cancer, what do you think? Oh, you think CRAP, I'm going to DIE, because you've seen a lot that happened to a lot of people. But if we found it early, when it was so easy to correct, when the doctor said, hey, I've got a little bit of ENOX2 protein, or I've got some circulating tumor cells in your blood, maybe let's do some integrative therapies on you and see if we can boost your immune system. We can work on the mitochondrial function of your cell and see if we can't reverse this before you ever require any of those things, before you have to lay on a table and have them inject radioactive glucose into you. So the cancer cells will eat it and light up so they can see a tumor. It makes no sense to me that we're letting people get so far along in the disease process. And I do understand that the people that are against this will say, but not every cancer is going to become life-threatening. Fine. Anybody, they don't say, oh, well, your blood sugar is a little high, but you're never going to get diabetes, so we're not going to help you with your high blood sugar.
Right.
I mean, really, it doesn't make any sense. I've just seen too many precious people suffer and lose their lives way too early when we can prevent it.
So you said a lot of big words that some people may not understand. Like,
okay.
But now, is that all things that you explain in your book? Like you're saying something about enox and...
Yes, it's all in my book. And I even have an online resource and the download of all the functional tests. It's free on my website. Or even better, this is what I did because some people don't like to read. So I have Cancer Free University, which is at www.cancerfreeuniversity.com. And I've interviewed all the scientists in the labs that are doing this testing, or that are doing all the integrative therapy. So if your doctor said, you say, I don't want to do chemotherapy, I don't want to lose my hair, I want other options. And someone says, okay, then you Google and you go, oh, artesunate and vitamin C is really good for the type of breast cancer I have. What is that? Guess what? I interviewed Dr. Jonathan Stegall, who's a leading cancer doctor out in the Atlanta area, about that therapy. And on all the different integrative therapies, I've got an interview with an expert, and so you don't have to travel all over the country. You don't have to spend a lot of money. I mean, $400 or $500 for one consult with one of these doctors. Wow. You can listen to them, you can see them if you like their personality before you go. Anyway, I always tell people, get a second opinion, and I don't mean second opinion in the same, okay, we're going for Mexican food. We're only going to try Mexican food restaurants. I want you to try the Italian restaurant. I want you to get a different perspective, because someone who's working outside of the standard of care that has higher outcomes. Because then you can make an informed decision. If you still decide to do full dose chemo and surgery and radiation and whatever they call these new immunotherapies, which are really just more chemotherapy that are targeting the genes, that's fine, but make sure that you've looked at both sides and you've talked to people. You don't have to rush, because believe me, you've had cancer for a while.
So when people find out they have cancer, they didn't just get it yesterday. It's usually been living in their body for years and years.
Yes, there are these new glioblastomas that are coming out that are very, very, very rapid, but that's like 2% of cancers. Most people have had it for many, many, many years.
Now, is there anything that we can do eating-wise, nutrition, that can help us? Is there a link that way?
Yes, and I figured out, okay, so on Cancer Free University, I interviewed Travis Christofferson, who has a book called Tripping Over the Truth.
Okay.
Anyway, and so does Tom Seyfried. He has a book, The Metabolic Connection to Cancer. Anyway, they have a foundation, and it is called, because I want to make sure, they just changed the name from Single Cause, Single Cure to, I believe, the Foundation for Metabolic Therapies. Anyway, I have it here somewhere. I'll find it just to make sure, but I believe it's the Foundation for Metabolic Therapies.
Okay.
And so they're looking at what's going on in that cell. Why did you didn't catch cancer? Your tissue turned into cancer cells, right? So what happened? What happened inside that cell? And they're doing amazing research. Back when I got after I survived the cancer therapies, all 3 of my kids were sick. And that was when the big gluten thing was happening. And everybody was saying, oh, that's a hoax. Gluten's not a problem. Well, you know what? I think they're right. But I'm going to tell you what what science is showing the real problem is. So most people that I talk to, I get phone calls all the time. I'll say, so let's talk about what you eat. Because obviously we're doing something. 1 in 2 men are getting cancer, 1 in 2.5 women. And we have dialysis centers all around major cities. We have so many people with digestive issues. We've got increased rates of Alzheimer's, and almost everybody gets, if you live to be in 70s or 80s, you probably have Alzheimer's or Parkinson's. I mean, what are we doing?
Way more common nowadays.
Yes, what are we doing? It wasn't that way back in the 80s, before that time period. That's when I see the shifts start to happen. So I ask people, because we all know guacamole is good for you, right? Because the avocado. So I'll say, do you eat chips and guacamole? Oh yes, almost everyone eats that. Every once in a while I get someone who doesn't like avocados. I'm like, okay, so let's talk about that. Let me tell you what's in that corn chip, because when you go in a restaurant, you're not getting GMO, you're not getting regular corn, you're getting the genetically modified version of corn. That corn, whenever you eat corn, it has been sprayed 5 to 6 times with Roundup. And, I understand where Monsanto came up with the idea of genetically modifying foods, because we want to feed the world. We want to help the farmers with the bugs. We want to help the farmers with the weeds. But what's happened is they've been spraying our food, and I don't think even they knew this would happen. But they've been spraying our food. Let's pretend this is a little corn plant, okay? I should have brought my plant in. And we spray it 5 to 6 times to kill the weeds and to kill and to keep the bugs away. So whenever you eat, so first let me go back. Let's talk about what is the active ingredient in Roundup that's being sprayed. It is a chemical called glyphosate, which I want to talk about 3 patents that it has. And I'm even going to give you the dates, because this is critical that people understand this. It was first patented in 1964 as a chelator, which means it's going to pull your calcium, your magnesium, your manganese, your copper, and your zinc out of your body. It's going to chelate. It's a chelator. Glyphosate, the active ingredient in what's being sprayed on our corn and our soy, which are 2 major food things that we eat. The second patent was in 1974 by Monsanto as a herbicide, which is what? A weed killer. So when you eat corn, you're getting a weed killer. Now, Monsanto did some research, and they said it was fine because mammals, the human, it does not affect us. But what they found out that is peer-reviewed studies have found out that glyphosate actually inhibits the cytochrome P450, which keeps us from detoxifying. So not only are we getting the herbicide, but we're not able to get rid of all the other toxins that we're getting. Yes, this is in the corn. And then the third patent on glyphosate, which is the active ingredient in Roundup that's being sprayed. We're just talking about corn right now, because believe me, they're spraying it on a lot of other crops. We're just looking at the poor corn plant, okay? Is that it is an antibiotic or an antimicrobial. So, and we know, you and I both know what happens when science studies are showing that you can go on PubMed.com and read studies about all the antibiotic use and how it's killing our microbiome, and then that shoots down the immune system. So when you eat that corn chip, you're getting the residue of what? A pesticide, a herbicide, an antibiotic, and then they're at a chelator, and then they're taking something called Bacillus thuringiensis. It's a bacteria that lives in the ground, and they want the plant to produce a pesticide. So they want so if a little bug crawls up here and takes a bite, they want him to die. So they take a gene out of Bacillus thuringiensis, and it's a little more complicated, but they genetically modify it into the corn seed. So that's why when you eat corn, you're also eating a herbicide and a pesticide and an antibiotic and a chelator. So And the point was, if a little bug crawls up, he takes a bite of the corn. It's usually these little worms, caterpillar type things they were trying to get. It would make their stomach explode. The intestinal lining the bug would crawl off and he would die. So what's happening to our youth? And even people in their 40s and 50s. People have colitis, Crohn's disease, all these. Autoimmune diseases, which come from inflammation. Well, do you know where else corn is? Corn isn't just when you eat a corn on the cob or you eat some corn chips. It's in almost every boxed product. It can be in the natural flavoring. In fact, I have a list that I got here. Let me see if I can tell you my list, if I can find it quick enough, of what all the corn is in, because it's pretty phenomenal what they.
Are there any natural ways of eating corn, or is most of the corn made like this?
Almost all the corn is genetically modified.
Oh my God.
Anyway, now I forgot what I was looking for you. Oh, here we go. These are common ingredients derived from these GMO crops is amino acids, aspartame, ascorbic acid, which that's when you go get vitamin C. Ascorbic acid, more vitamin C, citric acid, sodium citrate, ethanol, any kind of natural flavoring or artificial flavorings are almost always made from corn. A lot of the sweeteners, the high fructose corn syrup. How many times do you pick up a package and it says hydrolyzed vegetable protein? That's in so many granola bars and things. Lactic acid, maltodextrins, molasses, monosodium glutamate is in it's on barbecue potato chips, that seasoning. A lot of our vitamins, a lot of yeast and soy products. I mean, all of these things are coming from things because our corn, our soy, our zucchini, cotton, all of this is genetically modified now, and it's sprayed, with the glyphosate, which brings me back to the gluten problem, because people were eating the corn, and I think they didn't realize we were causing damage to our gut, and it was even affecting the mind. I mean, people were getting depression, and I know people who have gotten off of corn and their mind has cleared up. And their studies, you can go online and read them. But let's talk about the wheat. So wheat is not supposed to be genetically modified, but a few years ago there was some genetically modified wheat that was not supposed to got put out. But right now they've kind of got that under control. So wheat's not genetically modified as far as legally we know. But back in the early 80s, they started spraying the wheat with Roundup. They douse it about 7 to 10 days before they go and they cut the crop, because think about if a weed comes up in your driveway. You spray it with the Roundup, it's perfect, and it just dies, and you don't have to get down and pull a weed out. Yeah. You can just kind of boop, and it falls out. Sometimes you don't even have to pick it up. But they spray the wheat 7 to 10 days before. But they douse it. It is a lot of Roundup. So, and that actually makes the seeds, the little pods of the wheat, proliferate even more. And so we have this wheat supply that back in the 80s we didn't have. It wasn't, before that they didn't start this practice. And now a huge portion of our wheat is being sprayed. So a few years ago they said, wow, everybody's sick. People have all these autoimmune diseases. They have chronic fatigue, and there's fibromyalgia, you name the list. Everybody's got a yeast problem. Well, remember, we're eating the antibiotics, we're eating the chelator, we're eating the pesticide, we're eating the herbicide, and then you add wheat into it. They said, well, maybe it's the gluten. And I think they passed the buck on the poor gluten, because really, what did gluten ever do to anybody? Wheat has been hybrid for years. We've always, things change. But until we started spraying it, it kind of became something new. So think about this. They said it's the gluten. Well, I propose it's not the gluten. It's the gluten that's in the wheat that's sprayed with the glyphosate. So, and think about this. Back in the 80s, what kind of patient walked in the doctor's office? Somebody had a cold. They would probably have a cold or a flu, or they broke their arm. Something simple. And what walks in the doctor's office now?
Oh my gosh.
Chronic fatigue. Oh, I've got gas, I've got diarrhea, depression, cancer, Lyme disease, just plethora of new diseases. They've even had to come up with new codes for insurance for people who can't hold their bladder. And just all these different, I'm like, what? We have these problems. But I think it's got to be what we're doing. Because now when you go to the doctor, everything's chronic. You don't ever just go to the doctor now and the doctor says, oh, you'll be better next week. Yeah. No, take this prescription, here's some refills. It's all, so yes, food is very much connected, and you can't even look at what to eat until you know what to remove.
That just opened my eyes hugely. So going back to what we were just speaking about, how much Roundup would be used in a year when they were spraying?
Okay, so I'm just going to give you some comparisons. So back in 1987, they used about 11 million pounds of this pesticide. And Newsweek reported last year in 2016 that they use, and this is a huge number, 9.4 million tons, which is worldwide, which is like 2,300 Olympic swimming pools filled up with this stuff. And so now they're even reporting that our organic crops aren't really that organic, because it's all, we're all connected and it washes off. And it's not just the Roundup, it's the Atrazine, which they've done a study in Europe where they took the male frogs and gave them little doses of Atrazine, and the males turned into females. It just completely made the male frogs, it just feminized them. It's a endocrine disruptor, hormone disruptor. Gosh. Right, and so there's so much more to these chemicals that our body was not meant to have. We were supposed to have clean, fruits and veggies from the earth that had the good microbiome, and that those little bugs in the dirt and the worms were producing minerals and vitamins.
But with all this going on, how can somebody nowadays get your fruit and veggies?
Right. Well, you have to be your own best advocate, and it's not easy. It's not easy. Because the packaging is so deceiving. It's like when I go, people ask me, well, Jenny, what don't you eat anything good? Well, I do. Whenever I buy chocolate, unless it says at least 85% or higher, and these are both organic bars. This one is 85 also.
Okay.
I don't
So
eat
you
it.
can have chocolate, but you have to
but you
be
know, I
smart
eat the
about
bar. I eat a little piece. It's like 1 gram of sugar. But you have to read the packaging. There are lots of other candy bars this shape. They don't say organic and they say dark. Dark, it's a trick.
Right.
Don't buy dark. It's got to say, in my rule is at least 85 or darker, and you get used to it. It's good. And go to your farmer's market or get a garden, and don't get the dirt at the local big box store. Go someplace or make sure you're getting the organic soil, because if not, you're just getting soil that they've treated and scooped up and poured chemicals in, and you're dragging it home. And you've got your little garden, and you think you're having an organic garden. You're just going to have to grow your food, or you're going to have to go to the farmer's market, or you're going to have to shop in the organic section. Which, if we as consumers demand it, the grocery stores will respond. And I see in my local store, it seems like the organic section is getting bigger and bigger. Yeah, and so because people are sick. You don't realize how sick people are, because they don't really tell you that they're so tired, they're not sleeping, and they have stomach cramps and all these different problems, and they've got, fungus on their toes and whatever it is, but you have to be your own advocate.
So for me, I know that I can't get enough fresh fruit and veggies, and we try to buy lots of organic.
Right.
But is there something else? Like right now I take cayenne, which is a whole bunch of different fruit veggies in a liquid that I take. Is there anything that you'd recommend that we can do to add more into our body to make it better?
Right. I do buy I love, I don't know if you know Sherry Calbaum. She's the juice lady. No. She's got a great dehydrated, and it's a fermented, sprouted green drink, and it actually tastes like ginger and cinnamon and all these things all together, and I have it in my fridge in there. But find a nice product like that you can supplement with, that's not full of preservatives, that has to be refrigerated once you open it, because so many things they're full of preservatives. And the thing with Americans is we are so used to eating a high carb diet. We go for Chinese, we eat the rice. We go for Italian, we have the pasta. We have these wonderful breads. We have granola bars, we have muffins, we have bagel shops, we have kolache shops, we have subs, we have pizza. Yeah. And seriously, and it's way too much carbs. Our grandparents did not eat that way. Their cells ran on fat. When I was diagnosed with cancer, I promise you I was running on sugar. Because I was eating a burger and fries at lunch. I didn't eat. I did drink Dr. Pepper back then. Oh. Because I'm so proud of people, because the soda consumption has really gone down. I haven't had a soda in years, but I didn't know that sugar feeds us cancer cells. Because what we do know is what's different about a cancer cell than a healthy cell is the mitochondria, and there's like 1,000 of these in one cell. And that's your little engine. It produces your ATP through the Krebs cycle, and it makes your energy. We know that cancer cells have a really hard time making energy. So they suck up. They have to work 20 times harder to produce the same amount of energy as a healthy cell. Okay. So if they're sucking up all that sugar, and we don't think of a bagel and cream cheese as sugar. We don't think of some whole wheat pancakes or some whole grain bread as sugar. Well, it breaks down to sugar. And we eat way too much. We should be getting our sandwiches on wraps. We should be trying to get, organic lunch meats if at all possible. Whatever's on our wrap. Use lettuce. There's nothing wrong with getting a burger and having it wrapped in lettuce.
I get burger, no bun.
Yeah, and even at that, you got to be careful, because if you're eating a lot of meat that's from these confined feeding operations, guess what they feed them? The wheat and the corn and the antibiotics. And so poor Americans, and people especially Americans, we are being bombarded with this stuff. And believe me, it is no fun to get a major, to be told you're in kidney failure, or to be told you've got cancer, or to be told you've got Parkinson's. I believe our bodies are toxic. And my new thing is this ketogenic diet. Okay. I'm so excited about it. And I've listened to I know a lot of integrative physicians, and I see their work, and I've been studying what they've been putting out. And basically our grandparents, they ate meat and they ate veggies, and they might have a piece of pie maybe on Sunday. Their mom would make some cookies or something once a month, and it wasn't with wheat that had the glyphosate, the Roundup on it. But they were using fat for fuel and oxygen, and they were burning. 89% of a healthy cell will use oxygen and fat, and use that oxidative process to burn the sugar that we do get, because everything breaks down to sugar, even broccoli. Yeah. But when you add in that the cancer cells can't do that. So what if we tried to move back to that fat burning module, that fat burning, existence, which is a little bit hard because, well, no pancakes, no bagel, no bun, no pizza. All these things they're gonna flip you back into a fermenting of sugar type metabolism. And studies are being done. Some really interesting work is being done where they're putting people back into fat burning because cancer cells cannot adapt. They can't burn fat for fuel. Only healthy cells can do that. They're stuck, they're broken, their engine is broken. It's like saying you have a diesel car and you try and put regular gas in it. Those cancer cells cannot work if you give them fat for fuel. They can't run. They'll eventually, the idea is that they will die. Okay. So you add some oxidative therapies with that, some hyperbaric oxygen, some other things, and they're having really good success flipping those cancer cells even back to being healthy cells.
So that's what I was going to ask you. So somebody that's been diagnosed with cancer and is maybe getting ready to go through treatment, they can change their diet, and that can